how are you going to actually address a customer problem without knowing that customer deeply? What we're seeing is that banking software companies are building more and more applications that are actually embedding this generative AI technology to make those experiences much more personal, much more intimate, and much more relevant for the conversations customers want to have with their bank, for example.
Welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Executive Enablement Series, where we speak with Microsoft Cloud senior leaders and experts about the latest trends in technologies we're seeing in the market. The goal of this series is to share with you and your teams our perspective on the business value driven by the Microsoft Cloud for our mutual customers, and the opportunities for our partners to grow their business with Microsoft.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Karuana Gatimu, and I am happy to have another fantastic guest here today to expand our mind and help us think about the financial services sector. Anu Chawla. Anu, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. What do you do for Microsoft?
I am work in Microsoft Global Partner Solutions organization, specifically focused on large financial services ISV partners we're working within our organization.
Wow, that sounds like a really big job. The thing is, I find that our jobs are fantastic, but what's really interesting to me is the person and how they got here. How did you get here?
Well, I'm originally from India, and I came to the United States over 30 years ago to study computer science and was a software engineer for about a decade. But then I went back to school to get an MBA, and I was fascinated by business and strategy. And so when I joined Microsoft over 20 years ago, I was happy to take a role that combined my passion for technology and business. And really, every role I've had since then is focused on platform strategy, business development, partnering. And the current role, I'm working with our largest global ISV financial services partners to help them transform their business, sell with us, and actually go to market with us so we have impact for our common customers.
There's so much opportunity from a career perspective in this space. And I think also that it's a little bit challenging because of the pace of change and all the new technology that's coming. For the folks who are watching, I bet they're thinking about, well, what's my business going to look like, 2 years from now, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. As you know, Microsoft has gone through its own transformation and what we call now the era of AI. And all of our partners in financial services are also thinking about how do they actually make their products much better so that their users are delighted by what they're doing, whether they're banking customers or whether they're insurance customers or whether they work in capital markets. So every company out there is thinking about how they can actually make their experiences more valuable to their end users, how they can save cost, how can they do more with less, and how can they transform the way people work in their line of businesses, essentially.
Let's just take it down to something, that we can relate to, like banking. When we think about AI, how is AI coming in and driving sustainability, or what are the transformations that you're seeing that our partners should be thinking about taking advantage of as opportunities?
So, as you know, banking and almost all financial services verticals are very focused on customer experience. And you and I, of course, we bank, where every citizen out there works with a bank. And what we're seeing is that our partners are actually building experiences through the power of AI, generative AI, to make those experiences much more personable, much more intimate, much more useful for our customers. In the past, we all know everybody has had a bad experience, whether it's a digital experience or it's the branch experience. What we're seeing is our partners are building solutions that are actually giving customers the information they need at the time they need it and in a relevant way so they can do their jobs contextually and be more personal in terms of their interactions with the customers. So we're seeing a lot of that happen in the industry.
I think that's really important because if you don't know me as a customer, if you don't recognize me in some way, shape, or form, then how am I supposed to be loyal to you, right? And how do you think about inclusion and all of that if that customer experience hasn't, evolved over time, right?
That's a really good point. In fact, since I'm from India, we have over 20 official languages in India, even though we have two languages that are most common, which is Hindi and English. But when you look at, for example, a bank in India, there's a lot of percentage of the population that's actually not included because they can't correspond with their bank because they don't know the language. So with these generative AI technologies, what we're finding is that our partners are building solutions that can actually use voice, the power of voice, to actually take any language and make sure it can converse with the computer through AI technologies. And even in the United States, for example, what we're seeing is all banks have something called KYC, or Know Your Customer. And to your point, how are you going to actually address a customer problem without knowing that customer deeply? What we're seeing is that banking software companies are building more and more applications that are actually embedding this generative AI technology to make those experiences much more personal, much more intimate, and much more relevant for the conversations customers want to have with their bank, for example.
We know our friends in banking, they're not always the first out the gate with new technologies. Where are the areas that you see that these changes are happening rapidly within banking, and how can you help our customers really understand the opportunity there to really go ahead and move for this new technology?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, banking is a regulated industry, so it doesn't move as fast as some of the other non-regulated industries. But what I would say is that a few things are very, really kind of the prioritized scenarios we see. One is customer experience modernization. Banks are using this technology in contact centers and how they're helping their agents be more effective with their customers using assistive AI technologies. We're also seeing it in marketing operations, how banks are producing hyper-personalized content to make sure that users actually get what they want and actually see the content that's most relevant for them. And we're also seeing it, quite frankly, in risk management. So how do you actually use all that data you have and be able to use the power of this technology to do more what-if scenarios, more scenario planning? So all these are things that we're seeing more and more of in the banking vertical.
There's a global opportunity, it seems, in these personalized experiences, leveraging AI to make sure that you're going to improve that customer experience. What kind of opportunity are you really talking about for the partners out there in that space? How should they be thinking about it from a business and strategy perspective?
First of all, our partners should be thinking about it in a couple of ways. One is, how do they make experiences in their applications that are actually assisting the users of those applications? For example, Microsoft, as you know, has just launched our copilots, Microsoft 365 copilots. We see that a lot of information workers, or what we now call intelligent workers within the end users or the banks, will start using these features to actually get their jobs done faster. For example, financial services, Excel, everybody loves Excel, right? Now with Excel Copilot, they can actually get more out of their data. So they can ask a question about what trends and patterns are in the data, and they can actually build what-if scenarios based on that data. Similarly, a partner could actually take that experience from an M365 analogy and actually build an experience within their application. So for example, if you're working with a retail customer, you can actually be prompted, for example, when the customer asks you a question about what is the next thing that you should ask them, what are some of the things that we can sell them to make them a little bit better customer for us? What are some things that potentially can help the retail banker understand about the customer so that they can actually have a more holistic portfolio of solutions to make their lives easier? So these are some of the examples of how we can leverage the Microsoft 365 solutions in their roles, but also the solutions that are actually they live in, for example, retail banking, commercial banking, insurance, and make those a little bit more personable for that user.
I love how Satya always talks about the unmet and unarticulated needs of our customers and how we can find them. And I think our partners are probably better at that in some respects than we are because they're closer to what's going on in our customer space.
Absolutely. Partners are the last mile. Microsoft, of course, has many great solutions that are relevant. But when you look at the partners we work with, they are out there helping, in the scenarios that people spend their day in life in, right? For
Right.
example, if you're, a risk manager in a bank, you're spending a lot of time understanding the risk profile of the customers and how do you make sure you're optimizing the money of the bank. With some of these solutions that our partners can build, we can make their jobs even more productive and more easier with the power of these Copilot technologies, which they can build upon our Azure services and also the M365 extensibility. So there's so many things that they can do to make their products more better and more relevant to these users that spend so much time with our customers.
And they're building on our responsible AI principles. Trust and safety is embedded in everything that we do. I know you know that. I hope that our partners do as well. But it bears repeating because, of course, in finance, no matter which of those subsectors you're thinking about, compliance and regulatory requirements are a key issue. How do you see our partners helping us continue to understand that, but also build in responsible ways?
Responsible AI is probably the most critical thing in financial services. You never want to make a decision based on bad data. If your data isn't, you're training on the wrong data, you're probably making bad decisions faster with the power of AI, right?
Bad decisions faster. That's a perfect example of what we don't want, right? I think that's
Exactly.
what everybody, frankly, is afraid of. They're afraid of bad decisions faster that lead to all sorts of terrible outcomes.
So the first thing our partners should be doing is understanding, making sure their data is in order, making sure they're training on the right data, and then also, if necessary, making sure that they're actually bringing in their own knowledge about the domain. Because of course we're helping them with our tools, but they actually know the subject matter and the data, and they know the domain much more than we do to build these solutions for our customers.
Talk to us a little bit about the unbanked around the world. How do you think about that?
We want to reach those users where they are, and in many cases, that is an English language. So when we think about the power of AI and the ability to do translation and convert text to speech, we actually see that partners can build solutions that are reaching more people around the world in the languages that they want to be able to, correspond with, whether it's a digital application, whether it's a call center application. And so these technologies are actually leveling the playing field in terms of the effort needed to build these types of applications that can scale to more users around the world with the power of language and AI, essentially.
And text to speech and what's happening with AI, it's one of those things where you do have to have your own personal aha moment. I mean, even for myself, I didn't realize so much the power of text to speech until actually I saw my mom and my husband use it, especially as my mom lost her sight and my husband just isn't a typing person. That accessibility, it opened up the world for them in the way that they could. And now if you add to that personalized language element that is so important around the world.
I remember Satya on a trip to India last year mentioned how he was awed by this technology and how it impacted a rural village where a person wanted to be able to fill out a government form, but there was no way because that form was in a different language. And so, with the power of AI, they were able to take that form, convert it to the language that the user understood, and was able to help him fill out that form and basically get the needs they wanted from as a public citizen of public service. So it's very powerful when you look at the impact this technology has at the grassroots level, and the
Absolutely.
power of this technology. Yeah.
There's never been a transformation like this one as we move into the era of AI. But some of this AI technology isn't brand new. As you're mentioning, these things have been existing for a while, but now it's reached this level of real accessibility, ubiquity around the world. But from a partner and a business perspective, what are some of the risks that should be managed along with that? And what are the challenges you see for our partners as they try to, lean into this opportunity?
The risks are definitely there in terms of, for example, these models aren't deterministic. They're built on probabilistic and the completions. So partners should actually be doing a lot of testing in terms of our tooling, for example, prompt flow and grounding of the data so that they definitely are able to test these models before they release them into production. There's also some things they can do around, as I said, getting their data estates in order because, of course, these models are grounded in the data they've learned from, training on the internet. But how do you actually then ground that in the data that is relevant for your domain so that actually it's giving you responses that are relevant in the context of the general model, but also the specific thing. So partners need to work on testing and also grounding these models before they release them to production.
There's so many assets and so many ways that partners can stay up to date, but what are the top ways that you want partners in this space, especially in the banking area, to lean in and stay up to date on current issues and challenges?
So Microsoft does a really good amount of work in our industry blogs. We talk a lot about these technologies and how partners can take advantage. We also have a really robust Microsoft Partner Learning Network where you can go on and learn these technologies through Microsoft Learn. And then finally, we do a lot of work on, just social media. If you go out to YouTube, you'll find Seth Juarez, and I'm sure a
Yes.
lot of videos by our product teams that enable partners to understand how these technologies can be relevant for them as they build their solutions.
And also, I mean, they can engage with us, right? They can engage with us at different shows and through these sorts of channels as well. I don't want any partner to think that they're going it alone or that they don't have help because the ecosystem is here to help them, maximize this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Where do you think this technology is going to take us in the future?
I think this technology, as I mentioned before, will take us to where banking is more accessible, it's more available, and we'll have more inclusion in it. I also think that it will also enable cost benefits because clearly these technologies are going to make it much more faster and better to build solutions and well as delight our customers. So we'll definitely see a lot of cost benefits, especially banks that are really trying to optimize a return on investor capital. And we'll also see that at the end of the day, that we'll see a lot more scenarios that we're not seeing today. For example, just processing of loans, for example, could be done almost automatically without human intervention because these technologies are becoming so much more powerful as they learn and they evolve in the banking ecosystem.
What kind of skills do you think our partners should really be focused on building in their own organizations to take advantage of leaning in on those scenarios?
Yeah, I think our partners should definitely, first of all, they should embrace risk and embrace learning. For example, as they start using our co-pilots, they can probably, learn a lot about, okay, what are types of things that they need to, use co-pilots for, and what are the types of things they need to check before they actually start putting those things in production. And the other things they should, of course, be doing is learning about our, the work we're doing in our platform. We've made a large investment in our AI studio. We have a large investment in our extensibility framework, and really understanding our platform and how can leverage the platform to build solutions that take advantage of these technologies and deliver it to their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have soup to nuts, right? From these familiar and embedded experiences and applications people know and love, like Word and Microsoft Teams and even Edge, all the way through the extensibility capabilities we have AI as a platform. There's so much opportunity there, but I do believe you hit on something important. It starts with that personal aha moment. It starts from understanding what can this AI do for you, being curious about what it can do for you, as you mentioned, and whether you're doing it inside of Edge in the browser, you're logging in and having that connected to your own enterprise data, or you're using Microsoft 365 Copilot experiences, that's going to give you that human understanding of what this is really about. And I think that that will continue to help people, as they're driving their businesses forward, that enthusiasm.
Yeah, I was recently at a partner conference where I was talking about AI technology and insurance, for example, and our partners there were delighted because each of them saw the relevance of what they did, for example, as an underwriter in insurance, for example, using this technology to do a better job of underwriting. And when I showed them the co-pilots for Excel, for example, they were delighted by how much time they could save by actually getting all this data and asking the data, talking to their data in almost real time. And then reporting, we have this Power BI and Fabric, right? They're really excited about how they can build reports without the need for somebody building it for them, just by asking questions through Power BI Copilot. So there's a lot of excitement in the partner community to actually take these base scenarios we've built and actually customize them so it's relevant for the users that they sell their software to at the end of the day.
Yeah, the natural language interface, I think, is such a game changer for folks, and again, it's that global aspect that Microsoft does bring to the table as a global platform provider as well, so that our partners can take advantage of that. It's fantastic. When you reflect on this moment now that we're at this horizon of the era of AI, what would you tell your younger self?
I would just tell my younger self to stay more curious because the world is changing so fast, and we're obviously building upon the shoulders of giants in terms of this technology. But the more curious I would have been, the more I would have actually been able to absorb this technology faster and see the impact of it earlier. So I would say, curiosity would be something I would just tell myself to do more of and be more curious all the time.
I love your passion and your mastery of this space. Just so much good information. Tell our audience three key things that they should take away from today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first I would say is educating your leadership team about the power of this technology and how they can use it to revolutionize and reimagine what they're doing in their organizations. Number two would be prioritizing. Once you've actually thought about what use cases there are, really prioritizing the use case that make the most sense. This is a new technology, and we will learn from mistakes. So having a list of prioritized scenarios where you're going to apply your energy and resources is important. And number three is executing, understanding what is the vision to value scenarios, what are the vision to value outcomes you want, and really assessing them so that you can actually make a good decision before you go to the next use case.
That's fantastic. And I'm not going to let you forget to stay curious. That's the thing that I'm going to take away from this because I think we're all having a personal experience at this moment, this AI transformation as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you again soon.
And that wraps up today's episode. Don't forget that this episode is a part of a series featuring some of our most experienced and innovative global executives, packed full of great insights and examples of how to make the most out of working alongside Microsoft. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our other episodes. No matter your industry or area of focus, the Microsoft Global Partner Enablement Team is here to enable you and your teams to achieve more. If you want to hear a little more of this episode, we have a podcast which has some more of our discussion and some bonus content. If there's an area of cloud innovation you'd like to hear more about, please send us a note at salesenablement-gsi@microsoft.com so that we can create content that meets your enablement needs. Thank you for listening, thank you for engaging with us, and thank you for being a Microsoft partner. We'll see you on the next episode of the Microsoft Cloud Executive Enablement Series.